We are beautifully, melanated.
Welcome to the Beautifully Melanated Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah, and I'm here with my lovely co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Kay. Welcome. So this week we're going to talk about interracial marriage and identity. And this was a leftover from last week's podcast, on which my daughter at the very end said she was open to interracial dating. And I said I would struggle with it. And I feel that it was important to expand on that point so that there was no misunderstandings as to what I meant. I do have close friends from all races, and I didn't want... I hope no listener was offended by that statement that I would struggle with interracial marriage and grandchildren. So I said to the ladies, how about we talk about it this week? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Karen, over to you to introduce yourself and our guest.
Right, so I'm Karen. And today we have a very dear friend of mine called Elise. She's from Bristol, and she was in a interracial marriage, and she has a beautiful daughter from that marriage who is 11 years old. And I just asked her to come on tonight to share her experience, really. So Elise, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Karen. A bit nervous about this, but I'm good.
Okay, all right. So obviously I was at your wedding.
Yep.
Beautiful wedding that you had in Barbados. It was, you looked beautiful and it was lovely. And I just, wanted to talk to you really, and just so that you could share your experience of the marriage and, specifically dating outside of your own race.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I was friends with Toomey's dad for quite a while. He wasn't what I thought that I was going to end up marrying. But we went for it. Mostly, I'm an atheist, so mostly it was for legal reasons, because we kept on going back and forth. And yeah, I think I thought it would work because we were friends for such a long time first. As you know, it didn't work out. We did have our daughter, and now he's no longer in the country. So, yeah, I think there were very, very obvious reasons why it didn't work out, which I'd rather not discuss, like personal reasons. But in terms of interracial dating, which I've done in the past before Toomey's dad, I think they can be great. They're obviously popular because mixed race children are the highest growing race in the world still. The fastest, should I say, rather than highest. But I think there's things that as white people we bring to our mixed relationships which we don't talk about. White people don't like talking about race, full stop. And I think a lot of that is, as far as race is concerned, and I include myself in this, I think that white fragility is a really, really big thing, which we don't discuss. And it's what automatically pricks our hairs up on the back of the neck whenever race is concerned. We take it as a personal slight. And I think, I don't know, personally, I think that any white person going into a mixed relationship, particularly someone who originates from the African continent, is probably lying to themselves if they say that they don't carry a certain amount of both what our ancestors have done and what is happening in present time. And I think that's problematic. And I think that shows in the stats. It's the 2019 Office of National Statistics has interracial marriages with a 41% chance of ending in divorce. compared up to same-race marriages with a 31% of ending in divorce. So I'm not saying that there aren't people that are happily married in mixed relationships, and certainly not saying that I wouldn't enter into a mixed relationship again. But I do think you have to go in there with your eyes open. I think probably the happiest people are the ones that are living in ignorance. I know a couple of couples that say we don't say colour, and that's both of them. And you're like, okay. And one particular couple is still happy as Larry. But I think you might be living in La La Land, especially when it comes to bringing up, we say mixed race children. Personally, since Tooney's been 2 years old, I brought her up as black because that's when she first got called the N-word, and no one calls anyone you half N-word.
So true. Elise, I'm going to jump right in.
Go for it.
Because I think you couldn't have known this, we've just met, but you have just hit the nail on the head for me as to why I said I would struggle with my daughter dating outside of her race. It is exactly that. It's the white fragility. It's the not talking about race. It's the not seeing color, which then erases me and her family in the Caribbean. And it's the not doing the work, the ignorance, the let's not talk about it. So then I worry about my grandchild. And that's where I was going with it last week when I said, my grandchild is going to grow up with two identities, none of which are merged, but also she might feel, or he might feel, they have to choose one race over the other, rather than the beauty of having mixed heritage and enjoying the cultures of both. If we can't talk about race, if the family or the person my daughter dates says, I don't see color, I'm immediately triggered and offended because then you don't see me and you don't see my daughter. Now, my daughter is mixed race too. She's Caribbean mixed. I am mixed. I've just done my ancestry DNA and I'm 20% European and African, comprising of British, Irish, French, and German. So I say this with my chest, even though there's mixed heritage in me. I struggle when I cannot talk about race, like you said, about our history, about what happened then, how is it playing out now? And that you said this immediately, I already feel like, yeah, in that case, go out and date, daughter, have fun, go into a relationship where the families have those conversations and are really honest about the complexities that come with having a mixed identity. So thank you for that. And I'm going to pause so you can respond if you want to.
Yeah, there's a flip side to that as well. So I'm aware of my white fragility. I'm aware of where it comes from. It's taken a long time. It's not something that's come quickly. I used to think that not being racist was akin to being anti-racist. It's not. I used to think that as a white person, standing up in terms of racial equality was something that Black people would rather I didn't do. And because then you think, oh, okay, I'm going in with the white savior complex. I think it's taken all the way up to, and I've been studying it for years. I was studying racism when me and Karen first met at college when we were teenagers. But it's taken all the way up to the fact that I couldn't sit and watch the entirety of the George Floyd murder. I kept on trying to force myself. I'm like, this is your people. You've done this. You watch this. And I couldn't do it. But in that moment, I felt for the first time since Tooney was born, 100 to 200% that racism is not something that Black people should have to fight. I don't want my child spending her life fighting something that doesn't come from her people.
Yes.
I have managed, I've made many mistakes along the way. I'm basically, Tooney is in constant contact with her father via the telephone, and I take her out when I can. But basically, Toonie is being brought up within a white family. I'm really, really lucky that my father, who's now passed, is really progressive. My mother is really progressive. They weren't when I was young, but they very, very much are in later years. So we've been lucky in that respect. But like I've had discussions with Karen, as a white person, if I know where I'm at and I know what I need to do to live in a society that's equal, that I want to live in, that I don't want to be scared to go into certain neighborhoods, and I shouldn't be. If I want to live in that society, then I have to do the work. But as a white person, I'm like, okay, I've reached here. Why can't I have zero tolerance for any other white person that hasn't reached here? Because I'm white. So therefore, if I can do it, you can do it. So, and I think because I've been so aware that Toonie has been brought up in a white household, surrounded by white love, but I have gone the other way. So Toonie has been learning about Malcolm X since the age of 5. We've gone through everything in slow steps, but probably too many steps. I haven't allowed her to just be the way that white children are allowed to just be, because I am so fearful of what's out there for her. When you think that we've got Black children, when they're marked in this country, Professor Simon Burgess at Bristol University has done all the work. So Black children, when they're marked in vision, are marked 6.4 points down. So from the very, very beginning, which is their education, they're coming up against a brick wall of racism.
Yeah.
So there's part of me that wants to make sure that she's ready for that she's ready for being Black in a systemically white world, and that she has all the tools for that. But I have gone overboard. And so now she comes home and every cultural appropriation, and she's angry all the time. And I have spoken to Karen about it, and because I'm not Black, I'm exhausted after 11 years. And like Karen quite rightly has pointed out, you will go mad. You will go insane, and your child will go insane. So for me as a white parent of a Black child, it's trying to get that even keel of being realistic about what faces her, and especially if she chooses a Black man, what faces him. And also just letting her enjoy life and all it's got to give, because it was created for all of us equally. And Black children in this country don't get that opportunity to run wild in the fields the way that white children do. So there's my mistakes off the bat. I'll let you go for it.
I just want to say thank you, Elise. You have been, it's just so interesting listening to you. And, you've just been so open sharing your journey with us. So thank you for that. You said something about the fact that, you feel that you haven't allowed your daughter to just be. And that, you because you're trying to prepare her for the world, like you say, that's out there. And you're also trying to, I guess, shield her as well. That sounds really difficult. So could you tell me a little bit more about that? What kind of things do you think you have done, or what would you like to do differently moving forward now?
From the get-go, so we started off with representation. So I made sure that the majority of her books had a hero character that looked like her. And that includes from the Little Red Riding Hood, all the way through to books about Martin Luther King, and just made sure that she was represented in fun ways, i.e. Little Red Riding Hood, and there were kids that looked like her, and to slowly reaffirming her beauty. Things like books like I Love My Hair, which goes through every single style that she could possibly have and the beauty in it. Because just like your children, Tumi has wanted down hair. And that came in quite early. She has experienced things in school where she perhaps wants to be lighter. So it's a constant reaffirmation of her beauty. So we've done that through books, and then feeding her brain, and feeding her brain from a point of view of Black excellence, which is a lot easier for me to find in this day and age than it was for your parents, but it's still a dig. So that has been the most important things. And then as she's got older, explaining things are difficult. So when we got onto the children's version of Nelson Mandela's Walk to Freedom, we get to the end of it, and like any child, she's curious and has questions, and the answers to her questions are truthful, and because they're truthful, they can't paint anything European in anything but a negative light when it comes to stories of race. So then you get to the end of that period, and then your child says, right, so I should hate white people, shouldn't I, Mummy? And then there is, from a personal level, I find Black people more forgiving when it comes to race on a very general level, not on an individual level at all. I think that the fact that there wasn't a bloodbath in South Africa and other situations are akin to that. But yes, when you're teaching them, and then you are teaching them the truth, and it's ugly. And it's ugly on people that look like her mother. So we just have to use the love that's in the family to counteract that on a personal level, without ever turning away from what has happened on a national and international level when it comes to Europeans in terms of race. I have overtaught, and because it's not a place where I'm coming from, there are times when I've got things wrong. Say, for instance, the George Floyd instance, where she was grown enough to know what was coming through every speaker on every news channel. And we went right through that. And I thought I'd done a really good job of reaffirming what she comes from, the resilience of what she comes from, and the pride in what she comes from, without thinking for a single second that she wasn't worrying about any of that. She was worrying about her dad looked like this man that was on the floor. So she was going to bed crying in the night times because she was worried that that would happen to her daddy.
Wow.
That didn't go through my head at all because I'm not from that background. So it's constant mistakes and trying to repair those mistakes and trying to find love in those mistakes and a bit of light at the end of the tunnel in those mistakes.
I have to say, just quickly, that as a mother, I think you've done an exceptional job in, trying to protect and educate Tuni. And I think it hasn't been easy because Tuni's dad is absent, and he is of colour. So without that, I think it's made it even harder. But as your friend, I always say this to you, I just think, you're always making the effort, always, trying to educate yourself so that therefore you can be there for your child. And I think, I've met lots of white English women who said things like, well, I've got a mixed race daughter, where should I get her hair done? And that's kind of like the extent to which they've made the effort. And I'm not knocking it. It isn't, hair can be quite a challenge to some women, because it's a different texture, etc. But you've definitely gone way beyond that. So I just wanted to comment on that, really. Yeah. Ladies, any more questions?
Yeah, Elise, I'd like to say as well, you've done an amazing job. You've done an absolutely amazing job with your daughter, and it's amazing. I love it so much because I wish in a way that my mother was like you. I was adopted by two white people. I am again of mixed heritage as well. And I'm Gambian, Irish and Jamaican. And growing up with a white family, I had no access to Black history. I think also back then when I was a child as well, it was okay not to give a Black child. It wasn't okay, it's the wrong words, but I guess it was more normal not to educate maybe as much as now. So I had absolutely no Black history knowledge at all, absolutely nothing until I came to London when I was 18. And I love how you've educated your daughter, because I think it's really important to have that grounding. And I think something that Kay said as well, I did feel I had to pick one over the other. Definitely 100%. I felt like, how could I really, I don't know, identify as fully Black when I was being raised by people that were white? That was hard. And to not have knowledge of my history as well. What could I kind of grab onto, if that makes sense? So I think that's really important what you've done with your daughter. I just wanted to ask about a little bit more about your thoughts on interracial dating itself. I mean, have you been a person that's always dated interracially? Is that something you've done a few times, or what's your thoughts on that, and how's that been for you?
Yeah. Firstly, basically, I spent from my teenage years upwards mostly dating Black men. I love R&B and hip hop, and that's where that came from. It was where we were going. I've never had the confidence to ever ask anybody out. So my first boyfriend was white, and that lasted 3 years until I was at college age. And then I got asked out by my first kind of like long-term Black boyfriend. And so I've always allowed myself to be picked, rightly or wrongly. That was probably the first relationship I had, was probably where I grew a lot of my white fragility, but I also grew a lot of education. He was at the time very influenced by Nation of Islam. So I was introduced to Farrakhan by the time I was 19. And we finished because he wanted to go on and do community work, and he didn't feel that he could do that and get the response that he needed with a white woman on his arm. And I think that has really coloured a lot of my relationships past that point without me even knowing. I think I found out a couple of years ago just through writing for myself. I think I would be lying if I didn't carry the fragility of that breakup with me. I also don't come from a thought process where a European beauty standard is the be all and end all for me. In fact, I think I probably sway the other side. So I think that a lot of white fragility in white women is actually at the forefront now, where you have women that are pumping their lips up, that are pumping their backsides up. I know in the age group that I'm in, coming up to 50, when you're dating, there is the absolutely real concept of white women, our skin falls apart. And we have this kind of like shallow thing that, you guys don't. And so I think that's a real fragile kind of surface ego. And then below that is the image that we're always sold as the white community of Black women always being strong, not taking any crap, And some of it's true and some of it's based in stereotype. But you do tend to buy into it. And I think when you first buy into it, you don't buy into it with the realization that Black women are strong because they've had to be.
Absolutely.
It's not because of want. Who wants to always be strong? I don't.
No, it's crap.
Yes.
We want to run through the fields too and have the wind blowing through our curls. You know, it's exhausting as well.
It's exhausting. I was just going to say that. Absolutely.
Always have to, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. Bringing up a mixed race daughter for 11 years, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted of, I used to actually get a bit of a kick out of going into Waterstones or Borders and asking them to go and find children's books with a hero character of colour, knowing full well that they didn't have any. I used to like laughing at them, pretending that they thought they had some and going up a ladder and coming back and then being all fluffy. We think, and so, yeah, but that whole thing of Black men choosing white women because we're easier, that seeps into my fragile ego. I'm not going to lie.
Oh my God, let's get into that. Yeah, it's something I've heard. Not in my first 22 years of life. I was surrounded by Black men. Everybody looked like me. Even those who were white passing or mixed heritage, of which a lot exist in Jamaica. It feels like the culture overrode the race in many ways. So the mixed young women in my family, they don't ever wonder who they are. There is no question about identity because they're in the culture. They speak the language. They understand the nuance. And people around them look like them. Okay, we have colorism, which is a different animal. When I came here and I saw so many interracial relationships, I was quite shocked. I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with the Black women in this country? Why are they not chosen? And yes, I did hear those stereotypes, Elise. White women are easier. Black women are too angry. We're too cantankerous. We're hard work. And white women are quite the opposite. And I found that offensive. I don't know if you did, hearing it from the other side of being easy, because that's not a compliment either.
Can I just jump in there? Also, I'd just like to say, not only have I heard that, Black women are more difficult, we are, harder work and that sort of thing, but also that we're less attractive.
Yes, you see, my fragility seeps from, I don't believe that you're less attractive in any shape or form. I think it's the other way around. And I think that's why white beauty standards are copying your lips, your waists, your backsides, the amount of white women that now wear weave so that their hair is fuller. That all comes into it. Also, I think if you're aware of those stereotypes of Black women and equally of white women being easy, I know that I've gone into certain relationships on full pelt, feistier version of what I actually am, just because I'm aware of those stereotypes that I'm going to be easy. I have waited. I can remember after my second and my longest mixed relationship finished in my mid-20s, I dated a musician that asked me out. And I waited 6 months to sleep with him because I was not going to fulfill that stereotype of the easy white woman. And then he was absolutely appalling in bed. And then I've wasted 6 months. I have wasted 6 months of my life not wanting to be a stereotype.
How disappointing for you. Now, are we talking only easy sexually? Because yes, that's what springs to mind. If I'm honest, the white women are easier, I think, sexually. But is it only sexually? Are there other ways in which you're easier in quotation marks?
I think we're seen as easier because we have easier lives in terms of when I met Karen, we were at college. I'd gone through my stuff, like my mum and dad had split up. We'd gone into a homeless hostel. So I hadn't had it easy. But when talking to Karen, and I can remember the first time I came into your home, Karen, you and your friends mothers were dealing with young men that had to go to prison. And people being, in the 90s being kind of like gunned down on the street. I didn't have the women in my family did not have that to worry about.
That's true. Yes.
So I think we come across as easier going, but anyone with an easier life is going to be easier going.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You also have the stereotype of it's only trashy women that date black men. So trashy women are likely to accept drug dealing or all the other stereotypes.
100%. I've heard that. Yeah.
Have you, Sarah? I haven't.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's a truth. I don't know whether that's a truth nowadays. But it's difficult. And also, I know of black men who are in mixed relationships, but frown upon other women in their family circles that are also then going to mixed relationships. So you also have the stereotype of it's all right for one, but not for the other.
That's true. Yeah, there is a lot of that.
Is it that the black women should not date white men?
Yeah.
But they can date they can date white women.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. There's a discomfort. I've had a friend that has always said, I'm not keen on so-and-so's partner. And you say, why? And there's never a forthcoming answer. And that answer is what's lying underneath. But they can't say that because they're married to a white woman. But there is a double standards for you guys. That, again, is not something the white women have to put up with. Although I would say, as a white woman with a mixed child, there is a hurdle in dating that I hadn't foreseen. I've only dated a white person since me and my husband broke up. And it's the first time I dated within my race for a long time. And I think I went into it with a perception that it was going to be better because none of my mixed relationships had worked out. And I fell into a trap of, white guys are going to treat you nicer. And it was totally the opposite. Probably one of the worst relationships I'd ever been in. And then you've got this stigma of being attached to a black relationship because your child is there in all its forms to see as evidence. And you fall into a lot of racial questions regarding that. So then your relationships turn into a bit more of a ticking bomb because you don't want to put that in your child's life.
Right. Can I ask, Elise, how your family reacted to your husband when you first said, I'm going to marry
my
that
husband?
man?
By then, that's not quite so relevant because I'd had 2 long relationships that were mixed before then. My first mixed relationship was at the age of 19 and it lasted about, I think, 2 or 3 years. My father was always very, very, very nice to my partner at the time, but he had a private word with me in terms of be careful. There's a lot of racism out there. That racism will come to you as well as your partner. I hope that you're educated and you know what you're getting into. My mother was along the same lines in that first relationship. She was of the opinion that it's fine to date outside your race, but be aware that it's more difficult and you are making life more difficult for yourself. But they've always been more than welcoming to every partner that I've had. I'm very lucky in that respect.
And how were you received by your husband's family in Barbados?
Lovely, open arms. I think that was because they were glad that someone had taken him on. But no, they couldn't have been nicer. There's only been one incident, and that was in my first relationship, where the men in the family were fine. I can remember cleaning my teeth in my boyfriend's bathroom at the age of 19, and his older sister bursting in and saying, "Do you realise that I don't support my brother dating white women?" And at the time, because I was 19 and naive, I just said, "Okay." Whereas now the answer would be different. Now, if I ever come across that now, I just say, I can't judge you in any shape or form. I can't be in a skin that I'm not in. I know that through my experiences pre my daughter, but very, very much post my daughter, there are times when I think I hate white people because of how they act in terms of race. So if I feel like that and I'm white and I love my family and I'm born of the strongest, most loving woman I've ever come across, and I feel like that on some days, I can't judge somebody else who is not white for not agreeing with mixed relationships. So I'm not here to try and persuade that. I think that my job as a white woman to fight racism is within my own race, because that's where the problem is. And I can't judge a skin I'm not in. And so that's very much my viewpoint now. But at the time, I was horrified and embarrassed and didn't know where to look. But in later years, my husband's family have always been really supportive. Tooney's auntie in particular is always really, really supportive. And because they're affected by the knock-ons of slavery, it's very evident when you go to Barbados, but they haven't been brought up in a completely white system. So their viewpoints have tended to be different from the Black British families that I've been in.
And how have you found Black women particularly responding to you in the UK? So I'm from the Caribbean. I know we're very warm, we're very welcoming, we're good vibes and love and all of that. What has it been like from Black women in this country for you?
I think on the whole, back in the day when I was 19, so, like 30 odd years ago, it wasn't as good. And that was within that particular family. But since then, I moved to London around the same time that Karen did. And it's always been very mixed. And I work in TV, so the few Black people that I come across, because the media in this country is still highly classist, which obviously then that very much drips down into race, because race is an economical tool in the first place. So the very few Black women that I've come in contact with in work, I've always struck up really good relationships with, because I'm one of a few people that has a modicum of understanding. I'm the one that raises their eyebrows at other people when, something stupid is said or something ignorant is said in work, which is regular. But on the whole, I haven't had any funny looks walking down the street. None of that. Do you think it's something that's more discussed among Black women alone, or do you think that is something that they are likely to want to talk about with their white counterparts?
I'm going to jump on in here, and I think it's something that's discussed more with Black women alone. I think the white women that I've met in my life that are in interracial relationships, you are one of the most straight-talking women I've met. A lot of women, I think they feel very, or white women feel, that I've met in my life, feel kind of maybe nervous and something to talk about race, maybe nervous to talk about the fact they're with their partner who they've been with for a very, very long time. So I don't know why they're so nervous about it after, 10 plus years or 5 plus years. But I think it's important to have these conversations. But yeah, in answer to your question, I don't think it's spoken about widely enough. I think because there's a fear of people offending people. And I think that's not just necessarily racism. I think this country is so politically correct that it can go overboard. So people can't feel they can talk about anything. And therefore they don't. And the problems just get worse and worse because people can't speak. But thank you for being so open. Ladies, do you have any more questions before we wrap it up?
I do. I have been making some notes. Sorry, Elise. Well, the first one is a response to what you said about you think you overdid it to me, you overeducated. And I wanted to respond a little bit to this because where else would she have gotten that education about her Black history had you not done it? It does not exist on the curriculum. I've had to do this for my children as well. And yes, they have sometimes had a lot of anger and rage, and they want to know, well, why are you in this country? Why do you live amongst people like this? They've done this to our ancestors. They do feel the rage. But I too have felt like I have to prepare you for how the world is going to see you and receive you and respond to you. I have a Black son, and much as I would like to think it's a fair world, it's not. The anxiety I feel, especially when he was between 18 and 20, when he used to leave the house and thinking, you're going out with a bunch of white friends. If you're stopped by the police, you're the one that's going to land in a prison cell purely because of the color of your skin. He feels I've overdone it. He feels I've overprotected. But that anxiety, I don't know if it will ever leave me, quite frankly. I'm so incredibly proud of you for educating your daughter because then I feel it will give her the tools to navigate life. The world will probably see her as a Black girl. And so if she didn't have the knowledge and the support and all the love in your family, how on earth was she going to fit in either community? When she became an adult, she might feel alienated from both. So props to you for that. I'm just so pleased you did give her the education, even if sometimes it might feel a bit much. She'll be all right. My daughter, out of the way I've educated her, and honestly, she went through the down hair phase as well. I want yellow down hair. Right. Okay. You're a Black girl. You're not going to have yellow down hair unless we buy some. And having to teach her to love her body, her shape, her skin tone in a culture that tells her she's not first choice and she's not attractive. That was difficult and painful for me. But again, she feels that pull, like Sarah talked about, that she has to choose one or the other. She can't just be mixed race, that she has to appease either side to feel like she belongs. And so I don't know if that tension and that discomfort will ever go. And that's why she's so open to dating whoever she likes, falls in love with, matches her intellectually. It's because she says, I can't choose. I am both.
At the moment, my daughter has very much chosen that she's Black. because of her environment, probably because what I've shoved down her throat as well. I've found that going to see people like, I took her to see Akala speak when she was really young. I don't think she got that much from that, but I've got more from him since reading his books, and I've gone to see him speak since. And, you know, he's the poster boy, isn't he, for, you know, the product of a mixed race relationship.
Yes.
And so, I mean, we were talking about it last night because she's currently watching When They See Us, about the what's it called?
Oh, that's it. Central Park 5. That was quite harrowing for me.
She's watching that, and because she started senior school in September, and the constant daily microaggressions and the full-on racism that's hit her daily, she's very much now, I am black and you cannot tell me any different. She knows that she's mixed,
yes.
But also we are, their world is so much more open for good and for bad in terms of choosing their identity, because it's so much more fluid now than what it was when we were growing up. But as far as that's concerned, it's her choice.
I was just going to say on a final note from me, I had a conversation with my eldest daughter. She is 20, she'll be 21 soon. And I just wanted to let her know that I have no preference as to, you know, how she dates, you know, whether she dates interracially or not. I have no preference. I feel personally that love conquers all. I could be very ignorant in that after listening to you speak, Elise, but that's how I feel. I want her more than anything to be loved and to love. And I want her to find that wherever it comes. So I really don't have any preference, or I wouldn't be adverse to her, you know, dating outside of her race. But interestingly, she likes black men and she wants to stay within her race at the moment. But like I say, that's her choice. And I thought it was really interesting she said that. I was quite surprised because, you know, she's quite a cosmopolitan kind of girl.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing that I would say in terms of dating outside your race, as a white person, the only thing that I would be concerned about, just the same as when we've been talking with, you know, black women, you would talk about, you know, interracial dating differently than how you would within your own circle, than how you would talk to a white woman about it. The same goes for white people. And I am more than aware that the majority of white people are nowhere near a place they need to be at the moment, in terms of racial awareness, for the plain reason that it's not taught in our schools. Tooney has one friend whose mother, amongst the whole George Floyd thing, went out and bought How to Be an Anti-Racist. And she passed nuggets of that onto her daughter. She's the only person in this area that I know that's done it. That these kids they're sponges. If we can get that kind of thing into the school, because Tooney's friend, that's mother that has read this and she's been passed those nuggets, very much has a different outlook than all of the other friends that Tooney has that are white. And I think if we can get that into the education, if we can get some form of race equality into the education system in a very different version than what we have now, it would help in 20 years' time. But I think for my issue for Tooney, dating a white person, is that they're ready and willing to learn if they haven't already done so, and able to drop their white ego, their white fragility, and get their hands dirty, because it really does take that for a mixed relationship to work.
Yes. You know, I smiled when you said that Black people shouldn't have to fight racism to end it. You're right, we didn't start it. And I am so thankful that you're an ally, that you're doing your fight in your community. And that's what we need. Unlike Karen, I don't believe love conquers all. I think education is probably going to conquer a lot more if our history was taught in schools, not slavery, because that perpetuates the stereotype that we're slaves, but the entirety of Black history was on the curriculum in the same way European history is. Then children will grow up with an understanding that one race is not superior to another, that every race made a contribution to the society we live in today, that there is no elitism, no classism. We're humans. We're part of one race. Race is a construct, as you rightly said. And so I feel a little more hopeful after speaking to you tonight, because I actually was despairing, thinking we're never going to get there. I'm just going to take my Black self back to my Black country to live in peace for my retirement years. But I feel a little more hopeful now that perhaps you're doing your bit in your corner of the world. You're showing your daughter that love. And in that context, love heals, doesn't it? Love really is the foundation. That love, she doesn't have to hate white people and love Black people. Being pro-Black is not anti-white. It is, we're people. We're humans, first and foremost. Treat the other the way you would want to be treated. So thank you for giving me that little ray of hope. I will continue to do my fight in my little corner of the world as well. It would be lovely to meet your daughter one day. And I hope maybe, as Sarah said, we can have more open conversations, Black women, white women, instead of portions of conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's not been as scary as I thought it was going to be.
You're most welcome.
Oh, thank you, Elise. I really appreciate your honesty and your openness. And yeah, thank you. I was just going to say, in response to what you said, Karen, I mean, for as long as we are still, accepting a white Jesus, which is just ridiculous by its very nature.
Yes.
We are, this will continue, won't it? And my thing about education, and honestly, this could be another episode because I feel very passionate about this, is that school is about economics, isn't it? It's about churning out people for the workforce, pretty much. It's not really about teaching the truth. And that's what we're asking for. We want history to be taught factually, yes, as you say. And that's a campaign, isn't it? That's something else. And that means that there would be no racism if we were taught that every race is equal and everybody's contributed, and we'd be living in a completely different world, Karen. And I completely agree with that. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you again to my very dear friend Elise for coming on. Thank you to my co-host.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Elise, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
And you.
If we have lots of feedback questions, and I hope we do, then we will probably invite you back on to respond to them.
Okay. I have one last thing to say, Karen, while this goes out. Okay. I managed to get Black History Month taught in Toonie's junior school by a local poet in Bristol. And if we have to teach children about the slave trade, let's use the Haitian Revolution as the first point of ending it, because also I don't think there's any point in history which is so exciting, which Black women were 30% of the army that conquered both the British army and Napoleon's army. We never teach that. I never knew that till I was an adult. Yeah. It's empowering for Black children, and it's a stone of respect to teach white children that Black people were not saved. They saved themselves. Jefferson's letters after the Haitian Revolution are proof that Black people saved themselves from slavery.
Absolutely. What a great note to end on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I'm really glad that's being taught in Toonie's school. So well done you. It's fantastic.
It finished as soon as I finished the school, so I tried. But Lawrence Ho in Bristol's doing a really good job. So
yeah.
Good. So now for the secondary school, Elise, it's not over, but take rest. Take regular rest. Well, thank you for listening, listeners. Thank you, Elise, for joining us. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Karen. Have a blessed week. Take good care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
We are beautifully.